From 2020 to 2021, the rate of fentanyl overdose deaths doubled in Idaho. Awareness and prevention are key, and it takes you, the community, to make a difference. My name's Dawn Callahan. I'm with St. Luke's Community Health and chair of the 2C Drug-Free Canyon County Coalition. This event is hosted by the 2C DFC, Southwest District Health, and the Canyon County Sheriff's Department. Thank you for investing your time today and hope that you find this presentation valuable. Little housekeeping items. This is being recorded. Our YouTube did not work, but we will upload it later. Refreshments and snacks, thanks to Moonlight Mountain Recovery. How Q&A is going to work, you'll see some index cards in front of you. Our keynote has to leave right after his presentation, so questions will be allowed at that time, but then for the remaining of the panelists, you can feel free to use the index cards and we'll take those at the end. Restrooms, if you go out the doors, take a left down the hall, they're right there on the left. And now I'd like to introduce the brains behind this event. Melanie Croninger. She is the Senior Health Education Specialist at Southwest District Health. Melanie coordinates the Drug Overdose Prevention Program with a focus on creating and sustaining broad and diverse community partners and implementing activities to prevent overdoses in Southwest Idaho. Melanie?
Thanks, Dawn. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And my job today is I have the pleasure and honor of introducing the wonderful panelists that came here to speak. And so the first person I'm going to introduce is our keynote speaker, who I'm so grateful for. I'm going to read his bio real quick. I'm just so touched that everyone is here, by the way. Okay. So Sheriff Donahue is serving his 11th year, his third term, as Sheriff of Canyon County, Idaho. He holds an executive certificate with the Idaho Peace Officer Standards and Training, POST. Sheriff Donahue currently serves as the Vice President of the National Sheriff's Association. He has recently been appointed as Chairman of the Constitution and Bylaws Committee, as well as Vice Chairman of Government Affairs. He has served for many years on numerous committees for the NSA, including Government Affairs, Border Security, Domestic Violence and Crime Victim Services, as well as youth programs and juvenile justice. In March 2022, Governor Little appointed Sheriff Donahue to the Law Enforcement Panel of Operations, Esto Perpetua, to meaningfully reduce the flow of fentanyl and methamphetamine into the state of Idaho. In January 2021, Governor Little appointed Sheriff Donahue to the Idaho Criminal Justice Commission to represent the sheriffs of Idaho for a 4-year term. Sheriff Donahue is a past president of the Idaho Sheriff Association, is a current member of the ISA Board of Directors. He also currently holds the seat of chairman of the ISA Legislative Committee and serves on the Idaho Association of Counties Legislative Committee and ISA Jail Standards Committee. He is a member of the Western States Sheriff's Association and serves on the Western States Policy Committee. Sheriff Donahue is a past chairman and current member of the Executive Board for the Oregon-Idaho High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, HITDA, funded by the DOJ Office of National Drug Control Policy. Sheriff Donahue is the founder and chairman of the Man of Crusade, a national and international nonprofit public awareness campaign on the issue of domestic violence. Sheriff Donahue also holds a top secret clearance with the FBI. So cool. Sheriff Donahue, thank you.
Well, thank you. That was very gracious. When I was asked to speak, I thought, this is, we're going to run through this because it's only 20 minutes. So normally I'm speaking for like hours and I would bore you to tears. This is probably better for your sake. But is this my clicker? Is it going to move your slides or are you going to do that?
I think I'm going to.
Okay, just go to the first slide, please. So illicit fentanyl. So when we talk about fentanyl, we're not talking about what we all know. If you've ever been in the hospital and you've had a patch put on for fentanyl, it's a slow release. It's FDA approved. It's medically administered. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about street level fentanyl, and it is made in the jungle, in places, in the desert, in clandestine labs throughout Mexico, throughout Central America, throughout South America. But we can't really talk about fentanyl here in the United States unless we know where it's coming from. Next slide, please. So obviously, the border is on everyone's mind as always, but that's where the fentanyl comes through. That's where the fentanyl comes through. If it's not coming through UPS, the Postal Service, FedEx, it's coming through the border. It's either coming by backpack, it's coming by vehicles, but there's 2,000 miles down there to get it across. And then, of course, your 6,000 miles of the northern border, which is also a problem. Next slide, please. Fentanyl, illicit fentanyl powder comes from China, and there's no getting around it. This is absolutely known to the United States, known to the State Department, Department of Homeland Security, all the people that I work with at federal level. Southeast Asia is also a bad actor in this, but primarily your bad actors are China, and it's outlawed powder that these criminal organizations are bringing it across into primarily Mexico to be, and again, Central America, next slide please, to be pressed into pill form. This is an interesting slide of the maritime, where it's coming from South America and other places. They're not taking it overland, they're taking it maritime and then dropping it all into Mexico. Next slide, please. Once that illicit fentanyl gets produced, this is the route it's taking into North America, right, to the United States. And what you see is that it's widely distributed. There's typically 9 cartels that we are working with down on the southern border, 9 prominent cartels. There's literally hundreds of subsets, but the 9 are the worst. Next slide, please. There again, just another observation of how this flows. This is tracked by DEA, State Department, and others. Next slide, please. This is the enemy we fight. Right here in the streets of Caldwell, in the state of Idaho, and throughout the United States, from coast to coast, north to south. The 2 prominent gangs that are moving fentanyl into your area is the Jalisco New Generation Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel. You can see the person that's stripped down in the middle, that's a hostage, it's probably a rival gang member, and quite frankly, he'll be executed right after that photograph is taken. Probably a rival gang or rival cartel, and they make a point to say, we're the most violent, and that's why we can move the drugs across. Next slide, please. They're very well armed, they're very well ingrained, and this is what they're fighting on the streets in Mexico, and it's what we're fighting on the streets up here. Next slide, please. It comes through in backpacks. This is southern Arizona, a very well-known route into the San Rafael Mountains. Next slide. To drop places right out of our military base at right there out of Sierra Vista. This is a drop truck, drop house. You can see the packages moving, and within 24 hours they'll be in Idaho. Go ahead. Next slide. Tunnels, another way to move it. I'll just slip through here pretty quickly. Next slide, please. Fentanyl. So we talk about fentanyl, and I know the prosecutor is going to talk about this as well. Again, we cannot overstate this is a synthetic opioid, but it's altered state. This is pill pressed, clandestine labs. The problem with that is that, again, I'm going to keep going back to this is not medical grade. The medical folks in this room can tell you that I've had fentanyl, right, in the hospital. I have lots of surgeries. I've been administered fentanyl a number of times. This isn't what we're talking about. And the fentanyl that's reaching the streets is not people who are under medical care. It's literally children as young as 5, sometimes younger, 2-year-old who gets into the pills that mom or dad or cousins left in the house, ingest the fentanyl pill, and they die. You can see that the pills that we're talking about here are what we call Mexican oxys or M30s. Those are typically what we see, and that's typically what they look like. Almost impossible to tell between the clandestine lab print on those, the impression on those pills versus standard prints on an oxy. If you want to move to the next one, please. That's how much can kill you. So DEA analysis, very, very, very well studied. DEA analysis, anything more than 2 milligrams is a lethal dose. Anything more than 2 milligrams. Think of that amount. Like grains of salt, grains of sugar. That's what we're talking about. Again, when it's pressed into these labs, and we're starting to see these clandestine labs here in the United States as well, in numerous states, we're finding pill presses, the clandestine presses. They're not just in Mexico, not just in Central America, South America. They're now moving here. It's a lot easier. Get the powder through, make the pills here. Distribute them out on the streets, and that's what we're dealing with. But when you're talking about forced labor in the cartels, it could be any resident that you know, family member that you know, pressed into service by the cartels. You're going to work these labs. You're going to do this. There is no FDA regulation. There's no balance. There's no one's reviewing this, right? So you might get 2 milligrams in a pill, or you may get, name the number of milligrams in that pill.
39 killed my daughter.
How much?
39.
39 milligrams.
Yeah.
Yeah, 39.
That's what her toxicology report.
I totally believe it.
Yeah.
So again, you just put the number. Everyone in this room's physiology is different. Your daughter, and I'm sorry for your loss, your daughter, my kids, everyone's different. So they're going to adjust to this very, very differently. This is not just for the that we know of drug users or drug addicts. This is across the board. High school kids, young adults, college kids, you name it. So when we look at it again, the unit dose, this is done by DEA. Unit dose is 2 milligrams. That's 20 times stronger than medical administered fentanyl in the hospital. 20 times. You're not going to survive it. So next slide, please. Again, these are the pills that are coming in. This is what we're taking off the streets. You can see by the slides that last year DEA sees enough to kill 800,000 people. That's just in that load right there. That's 1.3 million pills last year in Arizona alone. Next slide. I'm going to show you some incredible numbers. This is what the law enforcement is facing on the streets. Look at how that's packaged. Look at the boxes, the candy boxes that they're shipping it in semi-tractor trailers and vehicles, gas tanks, you name it. This stuff's coming through. And of course, now we're running into colored fentanyl too to make it more attractive to the children. Next slide, please. I'm gonna probably skip over this one, buddy, and I'll come back if we have time.
Colored fentanyl pills along with another 100.
You're fine. I don't want to run over my time. We're 7 minutes in, just so you know. Okay, so back up. Let's go ahead and run that because we're doing pretty good on time.
Okay.
47,000 rainbow-colored fentanyl pills, along with another 186,000 traditional blue-colored fentanyl pills at the border in Nogales, Arizona. But the crisis stretches far beyond border states. Canyon County, Idaho Sheriff Kieran Donahue joins me now. Sheriff, good morning to you. You say that these seizures are just the tip of the iceberg, and all of this fentanyl is pouring into your community some 2,000 miles away.
Yes, it is. Good morning, and it is the tip of the iceberg. We do not have the resources throughout the United States, and specifically on the border, to stop and interdict the sheer amounts that are coming across that border of fentanyl and other drugs like methamphetamine and heroin. But the fentanyl is really the worst drug that we have seen on the streets. It's unimaginable. None of us ever thought we'd be in this predicament, and it's simply something that's getting by us day in and day out. And we simply are not catching the vast majority of this stuff. The Customs and Border Protection are doing a great job on the border, but they are so undermanned when you look at the sheer amounts that the cartels are moving across and in all the ways that they're moving them. We are truly under siege with this drug, and it's an incredibly terrifying drug.
Are these rainbow-colored fentanyl pills on your radar? I mean, they're meant to appeal to children. How sick is that?
It's absolutely sickening. They are on our radar. DEA in my state, in Idaho, just came out with a warning yesterday that this is one of the most dangerous drugs in the world, and it really is. They are pointed toward the children with these rainbow colors. We call them Skittles. Kids anywhere from younger than teenagers to young adults are using these, and of course, little children thinking that they may be candy. Like Sweet Tarts or Skittles, they could eat these, and I mean, they're simply going to die from ingesting these pills.
There's so much evil in this world, and this rainbow fentanyl is just a picture-perfect example of that. Over 10,000 pounds of fentanyl has been seized at the border so far this fiscal year. Fox and Friends spoke to a Texas sheriff yesterday, and listen to how he characterized this fentanyl crisis. Watch this.
It only takes 2 milligrams of this stuff to kill you, and we're finding twice, sometimes 3 times the amount of fentanyl in a pill that's not supposed to contain any fentanyl. It is truly a weapon of mass destruction that's killing our population.
And Sheriff, you met with former President Trump twice about this drug issue. Have you heard anything from this current administration about what's going on in your community?
Unfortunately, no, and you're right.
I'll go to the next slide. So this is 2022. Just read that caption. That's amazing. That's DEA. And these numbers they just get worse by the day, unfortunately, for you all, for us. The medical industry is overwhelmed by this. We're overwhelmed by this. Unfortunately, your children, your people in your communities are overwhelmed by this. You can go to the next slide, please. So Oregon and Idaho are what we call Boise, Idaho, Canyon County, Ada County, Pocatello, and then up north. It's called a high-intensity drug trafficking area. We petitioned to get into the HIDTA under the Department of Justice about 7 years ago because of the illicit drug trade here in our communities. It's based on record keeping of what we're seeing out there. There's only 29 HIDTAs in the United States, and you're sitting in one of those HIDTAs. So Department of Justice, Office on National Drug Control Policy, I sit on that executive board, which was mentioned. Just in Oregon, Idaho, HIDTA last year, just our task forces, read that again, 3 million fentanyl pills that we seized, and 1,000 pounds, or 1,000 kilos rather, of fentanyl powder. That equates to 32 million unit doses of fentanyl, just in the Oregon, Idaho, HIDTA. 32 million. There's not nearly that many people, right? But that's how many unit doses are out there. And of course, DEA, and you can go to the next slide. DEA in 2021, their analysis showed that 4 out of every 10 pills had a lethal dose of fentanyl in it, 4 out of every 10. In 2022, the analysis shows we're now at 6 out of every 10 pills on the street have a lethal dose of fentanyl. Stunning numbers. The chance of dying by ingesting these pills is overwhelming. And we haven't seen the numbers for 2023 yet. So just keep that in mind. This is the monster that we're all facing. Go ahead and play that real quickly. It's about a minute long.
You called fentanyl
This is
one
the
of the most
administrator
deadly
from
substances
DEA. Sorry.
on the planet. And when we talk about what it is doing, how it is getting here, and why it is such a problem, there are 2 places, China and Mexico. On China, the chemicals for these poisons come from China. That's right. Why isn't China stopping?
So that's the right question to ask, and China needs to do more. There's no question. Right now, China has a largely unregulated chemical industry, and those chemicals are being shipped on a daily basis to Mexico and to other countries in Latin America where they're being brought to Mexico. So the first question is exactly the right question. We know this is happening, China knows it's happening, and it has to be stopped. And it's a critical point because, as I said, if those chemicals can't get to Mexico, the criminal drug cartels in Mexico won't be able to make fentanyl in that. And so it is a critical upstream part of our work.
How important is the southern border then to cutting off the supply chain?
The criminal drug cartels have, their whole model is relentless expansion. What they want are more consumers. They want more people buying their drugs. And what we've seen is that methamphetamine used to be on the west coast of the United States, they've expanded it to the east. Fentanyl and opioids used to only be on the east coast, they've expanded to the west. They will stop at nothing in my view to make money, and making money means getting more customers. And fentanyl is so addictive that if they can get fentanyl into someone's body, knowingly or unknowingly, because we think in many instances people do not know, they're not seeking fentanyl, they're purchasing cocaine or they think they're purchasing Xanax, and then they're becoming addicted to
And
fentanyl.
that's where
And that is such an excellent point. That's why I wanted to play that. That's the administrator for DEA. She's a brilliant woman, and I've seen her talk a couple of times. That unsuspecting people taking, a college athlete, a high school athlete, they're not what we consider the drug users that we would see on the street that we're investigating or arresting. hey, you know, I just got pain, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna take this or take that, thinking that's what they're gonna take. Or they got a friend who says, no, these pills have been tested. None of these pills are tested. None of them. So that's just a fallacy. But yeah, they're good. I bought it from a guy that I can really trust, right? And they take it home and they're dead. We had a case in North Idaho, 2 16-year-old high school kids, 2 boys, they split a pill. Last year, 1 died, 1 lived. Split 1 pill. It's just astronomically sad. It's devastating, and she's absolutely right. The cartels, you're talking about literally close to $200 billion in income annually. $200 billion. There's 9 cartels. The most prominent, Jalisco New Generation and Sinaloa. And the sheriffs of the National Sheriff Association and the major sheriffs, we have called them out publicly nationwide that they are the true enemy to the United States. It is a national security threat what they're doing to our citizens out there. So, next slide, please.
You've called fentanyl one of the most deadly substances on the planet. When we talk about what it is doing,
We talked about the Skittles, unbelievable. They package this stuff up and make it look like candy. You can go to the next slide. This is, again, just there's the seizures that we're seeing. The seizures are just unbelievable. Mexican government seized what they consider the biggest fentanyl lab in their history. That was in February. Go on, next slide. I'm gonna before I go to the questions, I'm gonna give you a couple more anecdotes. So last year, DEA nationally ran a program called I think it's called The Last Mile, and they discovered that these pills obviously are being distributed by Jalisco New Generation and Sinaloa cartel in all 50 states in the United States of America. The crazy numbers, though, that they found in their work is what's a little bit alarming to me. It was just May 1st, 2022 through May 1st, 2023. So just the beginning of this month. They made thousands and thousands of arrests. But here's what's scary. The seizures, nearly 44 million fentanyl pills that they seized. 44 million in 1 year that they seized. Not that got by us, what they seized. 6,500 pounds of fentanyl powder. How many unit doses can that make? Well, funny we should ask, right? Obviously, they got nearly 100,000 pounds of meth, et cetera, et cetera. The fentanyl powder and the pill seizures equate to nearly 193 million deadly doses of fentanyl. It's incomprehensible what we're facing as a society. 193 million unit doses. That's what they seized in 1 year's time through investigations in all 50 states. That's what we're seizing. That's not what's getting by us. You know, we are just, the prosecutor and I will jump on to the television and say, look, we just made this seizure, did this search warrant, and make it known. It's not for the accolades. It's saying, look, this stuff is in your streets. That's why we do those press conferences. This stuff's in your streets. But as we do that press conference, we do one search warrant, 40, 50, 60 more got by us, right? We're not even scratching the surface because we don't have the resources to do so. It's just, this war it's unbelievably, it's unattainable at the pace we're going for law enforcement and for you all that have to deal with this every day. So I am like 1 minute there, so I think we're pretty good shape. There's always stuff more that we could talk about, but I wanted to give you guys a few minutes. If you have some questions, I'll stick around. As was mentioned, I do have to travel to Sun Valley to be at a board of directors meeting at 3 o'clock. I'll probably be a little bit late unless I use my lights. Did you get a call, Bryan?
Use it to the border.
So with that, I really do appreciate you sliding me in here and allowing me to speak this morning and setting all this up. It's been very helpful for us, and hopefully we can. I'd love to hear the other speakers, but I won't be able to. So if you have any questions, we could
right now.
Oh, yeah, real quickly, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you were talking about resources. We just don't have the resources, is what you said. What are you talking about when you say that?
It's kind of a threefold situation, right? First of all, we'll go from the back to the start. First of all, the prosecutor doesn't have enough resources to prosecute enough cases to make a dent in this thing, right? I'm not speaking for the prosecutor, I'm just saying that we have so many cases coming at us. We do utilize here in Idaho, especially here in this region, we really utilize the United States Attorney's Office on major drug cases because the penalties are stiffer. There's a mandatory minimum, so to speak, in the federal system that doesn't exist always in the state system. And so we push a lot of our cases to the U.S. Attorney's Office and they'll get long-term sentences. But again, that's who we're catching, right? So then you look at the law enforcement standpoint. But let's just take this area right here. I can tell you right now that the Canyon County Sheriff's Office, we haven't changed our number of officers on patrol in the last 25 years because of budgetary reasons and because we're just trying to recruit that many people. We're making a strong push to hire another 16 in the next few years. We're proposing that. So you've got this front line that we're still dealing with car crashes and people and the population increase. It's hard to put that many people on task force to just investigate criminal activity. Go back a little further now. Who's bringing it? The Mexican cartels. It doesn't matter about what's happening on that border from a humanitarian standpoint, and it's all bad. It's all victimization. I don't care what your stance on it. I'm there all the time. I was there last month. The victimization on every level is unprecedented, right? But the cartels are taking advantage of everybody. And so everybody that comes across that border has to pay a price. And a lot of times they're making them carry dope. That's part of your passage. Your $6,000 plus, you're gonna carry this 80-pound pack of dope, right? Going through not the port of entry, but the areas between the ports of entry, right? So you've got that. Then you got the bad actors in China. You got the bad actors in Southeast Asia. Who's supplying this? So when you look at it from that global perspective, we as the United States, we haven't secured the border. We're not planning to secure the border, right? We're not fixing that situation, and that's another 3 or 4-legged stool. You've got to have physical barrier. You've got to have technology, which we have technology down there, but then you've got to have the manpower. And Customs Border Protection is right now at 18 or 19,000 personnel, and they need to be at 23,000, 24 numbers of personnel. And their budget got cut by, I can't remember, $100 million. Wow. I mean, it's just stupid what we're doing as a country. And here's, Sheriff Donahue coming out, right? But it's idiotic. And we're killing ourselves. We're letting our enemies take over against us. And it doesn't matter what your views are on the border in terms of humanitarian aspect, coming from poverty or countries where dictatorships, there's still got to be a process because you're getting this. It's overwhelming us, and we're letting it happen as a country, right? So it's multi-tiered, right? But that's what we're talking about. We don't have the resources. We don't have the resources down there to stop the invasion of the cartels. The cartels are literally in every single community, county, borough in the United States. We know that. I can show you the slides. I can take you to places. I can take you out here in the streets and show you places. But we don't have the resources to stop it on the back end or the front end. We got to get upstream, and we're just not there. Yes.
Okay, so as an ordinary person, what's the best thing we can do besides not use drugs and not be consumers?
We've got to force our congressional delegations nationwide, not just Idaho, to create the safety net for our citizens, our kids, your children, the people that you work with every day on the streets before they become drug addicts, before they say, "Well, I'm on drugs." Don't let them take drugs. Let's get to the point where the supply is so low, it's not so overwhelming that it's easy to get at $5 a pill, right? $5 a pill. Come on, are you kidding me? I mean, that's how easy it is to go out there and get that. So we have to educate. The governor's doing a good job with the Esto Perpetua. Even that's not enough. We talked about that in our panels. We're doing what we can, but we're not getting it out to everybody. We're not getting it to the hands of everybody that needs it. Or there's this, it's not happening in my school. It's not happening in my community. It's not happening in my home. Yes, it is. You're an idiot if you believe that stuff. What happens with live television, I'm telling you. But that's what happens, right? We've got to take the blinders off, and we've got to realize that it is happening. I mean, 107,000 people dead last year. We haven't, or in 22, we haven't even seen those numbers yet, what that's gonna look like. Go ahead.
Are we still gonna be able to access Narcan? What is your views on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't distribute it ourselves, but we certainly have it on hand. But there's been a push now lately to take it out of the cops' hands. It's like, yeah, that's idiotic. I mean, who thinks this crap up, right? It's just stupid. But if we're as a country and as a community, if we're handing out Narcan, why are we handing out Narcan? Because we have such a bad drug problem, right? It's like, oh, it's not a big problem over here, but yeah, but take this Narcan. We've got to do better as a society. And that's every one of us. It's not just the judicial system, not just the law enforcement system, the EMS guys. I mean, honest to God, they're overwhelmed as well. It's society has to do better. If we're handing out Narcan, we might have a problem. You know, it's like, oh, we're going to put a place to have safe needles. Why do we have to have a place to have safe needles? Because we ignore the drug problem. This thing's not ignorable. The number of deaths that are coming down the streets, it's not ignorable. And unfortunately, many more people are going to die from fentanyl. And when the families that are affected are the right families that make decisions, then you're going to see something happen. That's a sad commentary, but I believe that to be true. And just clarification, I'll get right to you. I've had family members die of fentanyl. Okay? Last year, a year or two. I know what it's about. I can speak to it. I was there. We pulled her out and took her child right in Boise, and 2 months later she got back and she was dead within 2 weeks. And that little boy doesn't have a mom. One more question.
Last one.
Yeah, last question.
Thank you. So I have 3 kids, but one's in middle school, are in Caldwell. So are the sheriff's departments working with the schools to somehow get it out? So at our middle school, we had one video that was sent to parents after, it was like in the spring a few months ago, that they showed the kids an advisory, but that was it. And my daughter took from it fear, unhealthy fear. Like she was afraid then to touch her desk, because if a kid touched this and then touched her desk, she was afraid then to even go to school. But, so I'm not sure if the video was good, but is there other ways that like the sheriff's departments across Idaho are reaching out to give kids more information?
So sheriff's offices,
Yes,
we're not a department, but we're an elected office. But I can't speak for all of them. I can speak for us. We only have 3 SROs from the sheriff's office. Caldwell Police Department has SROs. You need an SRO at every single school in this nation, period. And then they can talk to the kids on a daily basis about that. Instead of just showing the video, talk to your daughter why she's in fear. That alleviates some of those fears. We as a sheriff's office are doing what we can. Obviously we're involved with the governor and his task force, but there needs to be more. And the school districts sometimes are very resistive to change, and that's when the school boards have to say, you know what, we have a problem, we have to address it. So that would be my suggestion. I got to get to the other speakers. I apologize for dominating the time. I apologize, but I will.
Your right's here.
My right is here. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, sir, thank you again. Let's give him one more round of applause. Thank you. Okay. Now I have the pleasure and honor of introducing Dr. Bryan Taylor, who is a prosecuting attorney for Canyon County, Idaho, a position he's held since 2010. He has been a prosecutor in the state of Idaho since 2001. He lives in Canyon County with his wife and 2 children and still mourns for the loss of his dog. I'm so sorry about that.
I always like to go before the sheriff because he always tries to steal my thunder. So. No, fentanyl. It's an epidemic. It's an evil, I think, has already been mentioned a number of times. There's nothing good about it, what is out there. My hope is just to kind of shed what I've seen it's the worst drug I've dealt with on the prosecution level over the last 22 years, and it's unlike anything else that we've dealt with. So sort of as the sheriff indicated, it is a synthetic opioid. So think of probably the most common opioid that most people may have experienced in a hospitalization would be like morphine, right? So, and then you got the heroin, which is the next step up, and then we have fentanyl at this stage. It's about 100 times, almost 50 to 100 times more powerful than your morphine. What's really, really scary is we just started seeing our first levels of what's called carfentanil, which is almost an elephant tranquilizer, so it's about 10,000 times more powerful than the morphine. So, not to put a damper, but that's what's coming down the pipe, it looks like. So, as the sheriff indicated, just a couple of things. It's always helpful to put it in perspective. Is right, it's about 20 milligrams of heroin would kill you, and the 2 milligrams of fentanyl, and then 0.02 of this carfentanil. So I got this at the coffee shop this morning, right? This is a typical packet of sugar. It's sweet and low though. So, but how many milligrams do you think is in this packet? 10 milligrams? About 2,500. So about 2,500 milligrams of sugar, right? About 2 to 5 grams. So if you think about it, the dosage of fentanyl that would kill you is about like that, right? 20 milligrams. And the carfentanil, you can't even see it. So think of it as, you get those nice big chunks of salt. It's about 5 to 7 grains of salt would equate to about 2 milligrams of fentanyl that would kill you, right? You saw it on sort of the tip of the pencil in that aspect. And one of the things that I thought was quite insightful of the CNN lady is it is getting the individual to utilize fentanyl without knowing that they're utilizing fentanyl. And that's the biggest challenge that we're seeing in the world of prosecution. Is although methamphetamine is still primarily the king in our county, it's very rare that you find methamphetamine now that is not cut with fentanyl. So the meth has fentanyl, the heroin has fentanyl, the cocaine has fentanyl. We used to see 4 or 5 years ago, we used to see a lot of the oxycodone pills, right? Now, we very rarely see oxycodone. It's all pressed the exact same way. Is what we're seeing is the straight fentanyl pills, which you saw a number of those aspects. So, it comes back to, I've always been a big aspect, right? It's basic supply and demand, as the sheriff indicated, a $200 billion industry is as long as there's a demand, there will be a supply. And it goes to your question is, what is at the root? I've always asked this question, it's a rhetorical question to all of you is, why are we such an addictive society? The United States consumes 80% of the world's opioids in some fashion. So why is that? That's a societal question that we all have to start posing. But when the methamphetamine and the heroin, right, if somebody is using the meth and it has the fentanyl in it, it is, once again, the root aspect is it's a supply aspect. It takes about 5 cents to manufacture one fentanyl pill. So if you were to basic, once again, economics, you take a pound of methamphetamine and you can chop that methamphetamine up in half, intermixing it with fentanyl powder pills. Now you got 2 pounds of methamphetamine that you can sell to your users. So you've just doubled your price. And that's what's happening on the streets. And that's why we're seeing fentanyl laced in almost every single other drug. It's very rare that we just see these drugs by themselves if you get a large quantity of it. So also, right, this is the local aspect of King County, that Hyder region that the sheriff was doing. So in 2019, this region, we seized 102,000 fentanyl pills. That was 2019. In 2020, we seized 730,000 pills, right? 100 to 700,000. 2021, we seized 1.5 million pills. That's a 137% increase in 2 years. And as the sheriff just indicated, last year we seized a little over 3 million pills just in this valley. That's what, I'm a lawyer, I'm not a mathematician. It's about 260% increase in the course of 4 years. So the volume of cases that are flowing to us of drug-related, we're just seeing this massive influx of fentanyl. Fentanyl and methamphetamine are our two biggies. So in the lethality of these, as the sheriff indicated as well, is they're becoming more and more potent, right? 4 out of 6 pills a couple years ago. Now it's about 6 out of 10 pills, lethal dose. And you, right, as if you have this pill, you don't know what part of the pill is lethal. You can cut it in half, you can cut it in quarters. It's a game of sort of Russian roulette, right? What portion of the pill that I'm going to get potentially could be the lethal dose, and whether or not that pill is even lethal in that aspect. So here's my rhetorical question. You know who the #1 drug trafficker is in the United States? Huh?
Political comment?
No, political comment. Yeah, I'm pretty careful where on live TV. It's the United States Postal Service, right? The United States Postal Service is the #1 drug trafficker. Not that they do it intentionally, but it's because it's the federal government. They're subject to constitutional rights, no right to search and seizure. So individuals are shipping all these things right to your doorstep. So once they get it across the border, then it's just trafficked throughout the country. It's moved in large quantities as well, but it's also trafficked in the candy boxes is what we're seeing. You're starting to see, thank God, Idaho is like the last bastion of not legalizing a lot of drugs, but a lot of these states that you're seeing legalize small quantities. Oregon's one of them. Just legalize small quantities of methamphetamine, heroin, user amounts that you can use. All of this is starting to be incorporated, but we're starting to see overdose deaths now in 3rd graders. As these drugs are slowly coming, we haven't seen it in Idaho just yet, but it's just a matter of time. And so the root societal problem, right, is when you're lacing marijuana with fentanyl, you're lacing other drugs with fentanyl, you don't know what you're ultimately getting. And that's one of my biggest concerns, especially for my kiddos that are coming up in the aspect. So I know trying to keep us on track in that aspect, I could talk all day, I'm a lawyer. You know, the questions that were posed always come up is, what can we do as a society, right? Is I only have my role as a prosecutor is as law enforcement brings these, we're going to enforce it to the best of our abilities. Individuals will get prosecuted, they'll get convicted, but it doesn't stop the problem. The root aspect is, how do we stop the addiction part? I'm a true believer, basic economics 101. If you can eliminate the demand, the supply is going to stop. And it's, where is our society and its societal values and morals, right? As I'm maybe preaching to some, is where is that broken down, that we don't need this, right? Maybe we need to start going back to church. Maybe we need to find other positive values in life that starts going, I don't need Adderall. I don't need Oxy. I don't need meth. I don't need to get high. I don't need to drink till I'm stupor. I don't need to find these false senses of comfort versus a societal aspect. I don't know how to do that. I'm just a prosecutor in that aspect. But to me, that's where all of you come in, is the society needs to start helping these individuals before they take that lethal dose. You see the signs, you see the aspect, it's the awareness of what's out there, being mindful that it's out there, and really starting to help the individuals, get them to the necessary treatment. I would love to see more treatment providers, treatment substance abuse counselors to really help people break these addictions that it is. So that's my 2 cents worth in that aspect. I don't have all the answers in that aspect, so, but questions are afterwards, correct? Okay. Kept mine at my 10-minute max.
Thank you so much, Prosecutor Taylor. I appreciate that. And again, yes, just keep track if you have any questions, if you want to write them on the index cards, and we'll take questions at the very end. Okay, our next speaker, I have the honor and privilege to introduce Tom Wright. He is the EMS Chief for the Nampa Fire Protection District. He's been for 34 years as a career paramedic with public and private transport with both ground and flight experience, serving the last 19 years with Nampa Fire Department. Thank you. Hi.
How are you? Sorry, I'm a little sore. Turns out my brain still thinks I'm 25 and my body cannot keep up. These guys were awesome. It's going to be a tough act to follow here, but I'm going to bring it a little more local than what these guys talked about. So our big thing with Nampa, we recognize we have a problem in the city of Nampa alone. Since 2019, we've had a 568% increase in overdoses. When we start breaking that down to look at where those overdoses were, what kind of drugs we're overdosing on, we realize that most of them are what we call polypharm overdoses, meaning that there's alcohol, there's marijuana, there's other drugs along with the fentanyl. We do have a good share of them that are fentanyl. There's a good share of them that are also prescription medicine, that somebody goes home, they're in pain, I can relate, and they kind of forget they took a pill and they take 3 or 4 and then we get them out. But we still have a huge increase in our overdose, and our Narcan usage has gone up since then 245%. With that, Nampa PD, I don't know the sheriff's numbers, but Nampa PD in 2021 gave 28 doses of Narcan prior to our arrival. Our crews gave 52 that year. In 2022, that jumped to 48 for the Nampa PD, and our guys are up to 78 doses in that year. So when you look at some of that data, when we talk about that, if police get there first, they give them a dose of Narcan. Depending on what kind of opiates or what kind of drug they took, that doesn't always mean it's cured. Just because we gave Narcan, it's not cured. That opiate is still working in their bodies and has to get metabolized. And so the Narcan lasts about, on average, 20 to 30 minutes per person. I've seen some people with higher metabolism, or we throw some meth in there. Gets a little bit quicker. You can go through it in 10, 15 minutes. But if they show up, they give that, we'll show up, and we'll start seeing that overdose signs starting to come back. And that's when our guys will bolus them with another dose of that Narcan to keep them going.
I'm sorry, I know it's not a real question to have, but for those of us who don't really know what Narcan does, a
Oh,
lot of people are talking
awesome.
about it. Can
Okay.
you just say what it is or
Yes,
does? Or?
I had it actually, I had the same conversation at a drug opiate settlement money meeting, because I threw out that and everybody's like, I don't even know what that is. They're Googling it. So, sorry, Narcan is so you have receptor sites in your body, okay? And opiates fill that receptor site and you get that effect in your body. That euphoric effect, the sedation effect, wanting to go to sleep, decrease your breathing, decreases your pulse rate, you just kind of go chill. Narcan is a drug that is made to fit into those receptor sites that fit tighter and better than the opiate, but has no effect on your body. So it doesn't make you, doesn't give you that narcotic effect, doesn't drop your breathing, doesn't change your level of consciousness, just blocks that site up so that the opiate can't fit in there. Okay, and our goal from that is to keep those sites blocked until your body can metabolize the opiate and get rid of it. And then we can release those sites and you'll be okay. All right? So the toxic effect or the bad effect of the opiates aren't going to be able to work in your body. And that's what Narcan is. So, yeah, and so usually when we see a positive effect from Narcan, it is either morphine or fentanyl. And most commonly now we're seeing fentanyl in the field. So that is probably our most common. So what actually brought me into this, since I've been in administration now for 4 years, a couple of my crews, one of the crews went out on a call to a 17-year-old in a really nice area, nice house, loving family, good parents. They showed up. He apparently had a drug problem, had gone to rehab for a little bit, gotten introduced through school, got out of rehab, was starting to do better, and then somehow broke off and met with this same group of friends that he had gotten originally addicted to and overdosed. Father was doing CPR. Our crew was able to get there. as they were coming in, mom explained that he was just out of rehab. They instantly gave Narcan. Within a few minutes, they had him breathing. By the time they actually left the house, take him to the hospital, he was talking, which is awesome. Except once we got him to the hospital, they were working on trying to get him back into a rehab, working with counseling, but he got discharged home. And a little over 24 hours later, we had a second call to that same residence. This time both parents had been out working. They came home, they were again doing CPR, and our crews were unable to resuscitate him. So both crews came and talked to me in between this, and both of them were like, we need to do more. We need to be able to do something to help. Like the first crew had read an article and heard about Leave Behind Narcan, which is a program where EMS is able to leave with the family the same dose of Narcan that our police departments carry. It's an intranasal with some instructions. And they felt that maybe, just maybe, if that had happened, we could have prevented that second death. And maybe we could have, maybe we couldn't. You never know, right? But it kind of got me going, looking into this program, what it would take. And we just got awarded a grant actually last week, which is awesome, from the Health and Welfare. So we are going to start that program for Nampa. Part of my job as an EMS chief for Nampa is I'm also with Treasure Valley Emergency Medical Services, which is Canyon County Paramedics, Caldwell Fire, Middleton, Wilder, Homedale, Melba. And so we're all under one EMS license. And I'm working towards bringing that group on so that the whole county will be able to do the Leave Behind Narcan here hopefully shortly. With that, our Leave Behind Narcan program is going to be a kit, and I wish I got a slide to you guys so you could add a picture of it. But with that kit is going to be the actual Narcan, but there's going to be some instructions on crisis management, interaction with them, along with a bunch of resources, local resources that the families can use to help get those people help. And I think that's our first step at least trying to help with that at a local, like basic, every person kind of level. With that, we're also going to hook up with some other crisis management and drug counseling type of people to help educate our guys on how to communicate this information to people appropriately and how to present it without offending anybody either. So one of the things I am going to head off right away, and I don't think that reading this room, I don't think it's going to be an issue, but I did get a bunch of questions about, well, if we leave, if you guys are going to just give them Narcan, isn't that give them free right to just be able to take all the drug they want because they know that Narcan's there? No, it's not. Well, as soon as that person takes that drug, they have no ability to understand that they've gone too far, and they're not able to intervene and save themselves. So that Narcan is truly there for the loved ones, the families, the caregivers, the other people around them to be able to help and then hopefully get that person through counseling or get them some assistance to fix the problem. Did I say within 10 minutes?
No,
Probably
I was so
less.
into what you were saying, I wasn't paying attention.
All right, I will step down, so thank you.
I love that, thank you so much, that was great. All right, our next speaker, I'm so excited, is Chief Deputy Coroner Tokasha Huskey. She has been with the Coroner's Office for 3 years and oversees the field training, internships, and community awareness programs. She has a bachelor's in homeopathic medicine and a bachelor's in health science. Before becoming a coroner, she worked in a multitude of medical specialties ranging from trauma care and surgery to urology and terminal cancer care. Her office has been diligently working alongside multiple agencies to ensure that all suspected fentanyl-related deaths are investigated thoroughly into the standards that are necessary for potential prosecution. Ms. Tokasha Huskey, thank you.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
That's a great start.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi. So I'm speaking for the county alone and all the deaths that we've been seeing here. Can you hear me? Did I move it too much? Okay. So when I say we've been working alongside all the law enforcement agencies and the prosecuting attorney's office, from our standpoint, so that they can make sure that they can prosecute from our side, we make sure that the chain of custody is thorough throughout, that we're doing autopsies to make sure that the body didn't already have a terminal chronic condition, a comorbidity, that the fentanyl, when it goes into its system, may have exacerbated in some way, and that it was the fentanyl alone. And on top of that, we do our toxicology is not only qualitative, and what I mean by that is we don't just test to see if fentanyl was in their system, we test to see how much was in their system. And when we get those results back, we see as small as 2 nanograms per milliliter in the blood is fatal within the bodies. And when I say 2 nanograms, that's equivalent to like a dusting, a very small amount, like Bryan was showing with the sugar packet. That's a very small amount that can be fatal, and we have seen that. So when we get those tox results back, we're also able to see which strain is it carfentanil, what substrain had caused it, so they can track it back to if they have seized from a dealer to see if it matches. So that's how we help them out. Go to the next slide. So this is just some rough numbers from what we've been seeing in our office the last few years. In total of our overdoses, back in 2020, we were seeing deaths related to heroin, meth, MDMA, all kinds of drugs. Very little, as you can see, was fentanyl related. And then as the last few years have gone on, it has increased a tremendous amount. We're in 2023, and 92% of our cases, I said 92, I'm kind of blind. 92% of those cases right now are fentanyl deaths. And yes, most of them have been cut with methamphetamine. That's what we're seeing is we no longer see heroin, MDMA, cocaine deaths in our county. We haven't seen those since 2021 because fentanyl is now the prevalent drug of use. Our 2023 numbers are also really low because we have so many cases right now that are pending because the lab, there's only one in the country that's able to do a quantitative amount. So right there's another indication of where we're lacking resources. So the one lab that can help us with that, I mean, they're behind. So our numbers are much higher, I can tell you that. I think we have 6 to 7 just in the county pending alone that are suspected fentanyl deaths right now. If you want to go to the next slide. Okay, we primarily in our county, we're seeing fentanyl-related deaths between the ages of 25 and 50. However, that doesn't mean that anyone younger than that are having overdoses, as the paramedics have been seeing. A lot of them are young. Why we don't see these deaths and haven't been able to kind of put a benchmark on those, it could be for a number of reasons. A lot of adolescents will be transported from the scene out of Canyon County to a trauma center. So if they were to die there, they're not reported by us. We're not investigating those ones from the coroner's office standpoint. Perhaps sometimes their bodies are just more resilient to the toxicity of fentanyl. We're not really sure. And a lot of adolescents are actually aware of the effects, which is kind of surprising, and they have friends or they personally carry Narcan on them. We have been seeing, I don't know if any of you have watched the news in the last few months, we were warned on like MSNBC that xylazine, which is an animal tranquilizer, a sedative used at veterinary clinics to essentially put them to sleep for surgery, is being cut with fentanyl. The nation was warned that it has primarily been on the East Coast. Well, Canyon County, we had our first case 2 months ago that it has finally reached us. Xylazine makes it approximately 20 times stronger. If it's already 100 times stronger than morphine in a setting, and then you add xylazine, which dealers are cutting with it to make it stronger and it lasts longer, our cases are going to increase tremendously this year. Next slide. So what are we doing? So from the coroner's office, aside from working with law enforcement and prosecuting attorney's office to make sure that we can prosecute if we can, we'll try everything we can. From our standpoint, we are standardizing it across the board from whichever agency we're working with to make sure we're all doing the same scene investigation, the same death investigation, interviewing witnesses appropriately and helping out law enforcement on scene as much as possible. What else we're doing is we, the educators of our school districts, have asked the coroner's office to come and do sort of a coroner 101 program for primarily high schools. We're trying to get into middle schools. It's a forensics 101 course. Over the last few months, I've been able to incorporate kind of a fentanyl awareness program into it, and that's telling the kids like what to look for, what your friends might be acting like, maybe if you're at a house party or something, what signs and symptoms to look for, what to do in that circumstance, where to go to get intranasal Narcan. The CDC has unlimited resources where you can get it for free. While I've been doing these kind of fentanyl awareness groups in these high schools, it's become very alarming that a lot of these high schoolers say that's the new party drug at house parties. Like everyone will be getting like marijuana out, and they will sit there and watch someone crush up fentanyl and sprinkle it on their marijuana, which is really concerning. A lot of them tell me that they don't know how lethal it is. They were never told that. So that's where the awareness is becoming a big deal. We need to get it out there. These younger groups just think it's something that, hey, it's a party drug. It's like how alcohol and just weed was back in the day. No, it's now fentanyl is everywhere, and most of these teenagers, they've come across it more than one time in their life already, and they just don't know. So there's that. So kind of in conclusion, our office has seen the effects of the fentanyl crisis firsthand, and in unfortunately the worst possible way. Since 2020, we've had over 5 times as many cases of fentanyl related deaths. We no longer see heroin, cocaine, any of the other drugs that we used to see as causing them. It's just, we're not seeing them anymore. It's all fentanyl. Most of our cases is fentanyl only, which is even more crazy, especially this year. Compared to last year, it'd be fentanyl mixed with methamphetamine, fentanyl mixed with prescription drugs. But this year it's been primarily just fentanyl on its own, and in very small doses, and, which means it's getting stronger, and we're seeing the worst of it. We plan to continue our efforts with local agencies to spread this awareness. We're hoping to get more into schools. School districts, obviously, they're a little worried that we will scare kids by telling them that. We kind of got an in by, if we go in and we're teaching sort of a forensics class, we can introduce it that way, so they're more interested in like forensics and what we're seeing, and they're more comfortable with us approaching it in more of a science aspect than just coming in and doing a fentanyl awareness. So if we can continue to get in like that, and we're still spreading that awareness, then I think we will make a bigger mark, kind of starting from the younger generation going forward. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And next, our final speaker today is Cheri Dent, who works as a mental health and addictions counselor for Moonlight Mountain Recovery. She is a licensed professional counselor and has an advanced, she's an advanced certified drug and alcohol counselor.
Okay, hello everybody. I did bring a couple people with me. I brought one of our clinical supervisors, Jen Hopkins, and then our executive director, Jared Date, and hopefully they'll be able to help me answer questions if I don't have the answers for you. But what I wanted to do today was give you a little bit of perspective from the client's side of things, from the people that are in active addiction. And those are the people that we work with. So if you want to flip the slide. We have 13 locations, 7 in the Treasure Valley, 6 of them are partial hospitalization programs, and then we have 1 intensive outpatient program. So just in this area, we have quite a few facilities. Turn the slide for me, thanks. Our clients come from mostly lower socioeconomic status. That's not 100%, but most of them, their age varies from 18 to over 60. We see fentanyl, methamphetamine, cannabis, and alcohol addiction, a lot of cross addiction amongst our clientele. And then we have the underlying issues of trauma, grief, mental health, and attachment injuries. So a lot of our clients, when you hear their stories, they're full of trauma and unprocessed grief, and that's where they find the addiction. because it's the solution to all of that pain until it isn't. We see a lot of generational substance abuse where the client has used the first time with their mother or their stepfather or their father, and it's a normal way of coping in their families. And they have a lack of coping skills to deal with any kind of life problems. They become easily overwhelmed, and hence the use is their way of coping and kind of getting out of all that anxiety and depression. Next slide. Trends, like was spoken about, fentanyl is discovered in almost every illegal substance. We have very few people that come in with just a methamphetamine problem. And what we're seeing is when they come in, we do a urine analysis, and when it comes back from the toxicology lab, the results will have fentanyl in it, and they're surprised because they're not fentanyl users. So they are unknowingly using fentanyl. And what makes that really dangerous is they don't have the respiratory resilience that an opioid user will have. So very, very small amounts can cause an overdose. And it's usually concentrated in some area, so they're having it all at once when they're using. There's a couple of trends that I want to talk about a little bit. The perfect high, and then being addicted to dying, which is increasing the use of fentanyl. Thanks, Melanie. The perfect high is mixing uppers and downers together to create what's called the perfect high, and using fentanyl and methamphetamine at the same time. And what's really disturbing is if you go on TikTok and look it up, people are filming each other on this because they have loss of motor control, they can have vision loss, there's vomiting, there's a psychotic break, can lead to unconsciousness, brain damage, brain aneurysms, seizures, high or low blood pressure, heart attack, and fatal overdose. And it's seen as something that is funny for people to watch, and that's just extremely disturbing. Next slide. The other trend we're seeing is people being addicted to dying, and these are quotes from our clients. One of them says, "I love the feeling of being on the edge. How far can I push it? It's amazing." And just that feeling of almost crossing over but not quite, and having that power over death, or that feeling of power over death. And the other part of that is another client says, "When I come back, everybody is so loving and kind, it makes me feel as if they love me." So this person has no self-love, no self-worth, and when they, sorry, a little emotional about that one, when they come back, all the people around them are loving and kind and caring and saying wonderful things about them, and that feeds them. The problem with that is then they're even more connected to people that are using. And when you get out of that and into a rehabilitation center, if you're gonna go back to that because that's where you find love, you're gonna end up using again. So, next slide. Fentanyl overdose and naloxone, which is Narcan. If you look, that Sherriff showed some of these too, that lethal dosage of fentanyl on the end of that pencil that can kill you, the rainbow fentanyl and the blues. We're seeing a lot more use of fentanyl powder as opposed to fentanyl pills, which is also extremely dangerous. That's a hard one. And talking about, well, does Narcan just allow them to keep using? When I first saw the billboard for Narcan, that's really what I thought. I thought, wow, we're just gonna keep bringing them back and they're going to keep using. And they have this with them so they know that they're not gonna die. And as I started working in the industry, it's surprising to me how many people have a second chance or a third chance just because there was Narcan on site. And so I want to just read a little story from a client, and please bear with me if I get a little emotional because it touches my heart. So I will try not to cry. But she says, "I tried to quit on my own. I started using fentanyl by mistake. It was given to me. I left home at 14. I was living everywhere. Someone said, try this. So I did. The rush, amazing. Had to have more. Then I started feeling sick. Didn't know what was wrong with me. My friend told me I was dope sick. Never felt that before. Never wanted to again. Had to have it every day. I would do anything for it. Chasing the high. The more you do, the more you need. I overdosed. Couldn't quit. Got charged. Couldn't quit. Got raped. Couldn't quit. I OD'd, crashed my car. Cops said it took 2 Narcans to bring me back. Then I just wanted to die. Now I'm happy to be alive." sorry. My mom and I are getting along okay. My stepdad is talking to me. He never's talked to me before. I want to get my GED. Life is hard, but I want to live. And without that, she probably would have died. She's facing a lot of legal charges, and I don't know where she'll end up, and I don't even know if her sobriety will be long lasting. What I do know is that her parents have another day with her. Her brothers and sisters get to spend a little more time with her, and she's sober for now. So, yeah. The thing about fentanyl, too, is it's so addictive, and the high is so high, and it's so short that they have to keep using. And so it's easy to overdose. You know, we have some clients, when they come in, they say they're doing 40 to 50 pills a day. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. And then if you think about what they have to do to get the money to get that, that's a lot too. So it's very disheartening, and it's definitely a problem. Next slide, please. It's my conclusion. Most of our clients that are using fentanyl had no idea what they were getting into. Once they started, they were unable to stop. Some of them love the lifestyle, but even that fades eventually. They are all beautiful people trapped by an addiction. They love their families, their children. They just don't love themselves. Addiction is the most powerful force in human nature, and fentanyl is the most dangerous substance in the community. It's a community problem, and it will take a community solution. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
So we'll take your index card, if you pass them to this owner, I'll collect them and we'll start the question and answer period. Okay, the Narcan program. Leave Behind program is amazing, but what about people who have not encountered law enforcement and EMS? HB 350 removes Narcan access to the rest of the community. So.
Do I have to move there?
No.
Not sure I can keep the moving that well. So, thank you. So, yes, the House Bill, the newest House Bill does allow us to be able to purchase it over the counter, which I think is good. I don't know exactly how the pharmacies will do that, if they're gonna be able to give it out for free, or if it is gonna be, you know, you'll have to buy it, but you will be able to have access to it. So if you are around people that you know are using, or have family members that are using, it wouldn't hurt to go do that. We've discussed the possibility of putting a Narcan station, a dispensary station, at the station ourselves. We have some conflicts with that because if our crews are on calls, which with our resources being limited as we all are, we're doing more calls than ever with the same manpower we've had for the last 11 years. So it's a challenge for us to keep that man for people to be able to access. So yes, I don't exactly know how pharmacies are going to do it yet, but it will be available at pharmacies shortly.
Okay. Why didn't the legislature adopt mandatory minimum sentencing for fentanyl?
It's a great question.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know. We're being broadcast live, so I'm very mindful. I don't know the conversations that went back behind closed doors, why. I think there's a bigger question of just mandatory minimums in general, and fentanyl not necessarily was the key component, but I think it's everything else. There's always this trepidation, at least what I've heard, and not putting words in people's mouth, that we're just locking everyone up for drugs, and that's a very false statement. It's by the time somebody goes to the Department of Corrections for a drug-related offense, there has been so many chances that the system has tried to help with either recovery, drug court programs, multiple probation violations. We're trying everything to help them get rid of the addiction because we want them to be productive members of society. And the ones that do end up at the Department of Corrections on trafficking are the ones that are moving, 20 to 50,000 pills at a time, and they should be held accountable. So I don't know the answer. You would have to talk to your state legislature. I only enforce the laws that they give me.
What is norfentanyl?
Carfentanil or?
Norfentanyl? Norfentanyl is a derivative of fentanyl. So when your test for, in toxicology tests, when you test for fentanyl, as the body metabolizes it, it turns it into norfentanyl. And that's what that is.
Okay, another, why don't we have more intensive treatment centers long-term? Why isn't there inpatient women children's programs? Resources?
I would say financial resources. Who's gonna pay for it? That's would be my answer.
Is there a mobile crisis unit available on overdose cases?
It's a realm I'm not even sure about.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I'll say I'll say no.
I know that the hospitals, when we transport somebody, does have social services that work with them that can get them in touch with those. But as far as an actual crisis response, I don't know.
What are the negative effects of Narcan, or if given when not overdosing, like say if a kid got into it?
Yeah, there is no negative effects to Narcan, so if you give it to somebody that you think might have overdosed that didn't, it will last in their system for about 20 minutes and go away not a big deal. It has no real major side effects. Occasionally some people have gotten a little nauseous with it, but that's about it. It's pretty rare.
Do you think judges are doing a good job putting dealers in jail? You get all the hard ones.
Once again, since we're being live streamed and being recorded, it's the judiciary works with the tools and the statutes in which we are all given. So they do a good job with what we have available to us. There's so many competing factors as well. 90% of the people, you can keep this in the recording, 90% of the people that we have prosecuted, I have prosecuted over my 2 decades of doing this for drug-related offenses, are good human beings. They have an addiction, and I want them to be back in society away from that addiction. That's the ultimate goal. But I have a job to do to hold people accountable for breaking the norms that our society has established. The judges, I'm pretty confident, are of the same opinion. They're trying to do everything in their power to how do we get this person back on the straight and narrow. Just locking them up in a jail or a prison is not the right answer. Now, if they don't do anything that we ask them to do and don't give us any other options available to us, then that's the only thing that we have available, or the judges would have available. But for the most part, we're trying to send them to the counselors, the treatment providers, trying to make sure that they're doing the appropriate substance abuse testing. So that's my long-winded, non-committal answer.
Okay, I have one about parents and schools, resources, but are there any other questions for our panel? I'll take that one. Okay, all right. Okay, so you can stay up here with okay, so part of the 2C Drug Free Coalition's role is prevention and awareness, and so we are striving to get those resources out. Collaboration with schools is one of those. items that we really hope to affect more in the future. We're always looking for new coalition members. We do have a booth over here if you want to come talk to me afterwards. The HIDA, they did put out a bulletin for schools and parents. There are resources out there. It's just a matter of, I mean, the schools are overwhelmed as it is. Vaping, you know, as you know, is taken over, and now this. So and resources. It comes down to resources. I mean, a nurse, a school nurse, counselor, there's lack of SROs, teachers, they can, you know, they're supposed to be teaching our kids. So it takes a community. It's gonna take all of us. Parents need to take accountability and do their part as well in the home. So we do have a website. It has resources on there as well as crisis resources. And Melanie, is there anything else that you wanted to add on that or anything else?
Sure. So we wanted to have a few practical calls to action. Just, you know, you got a lot of information today, so what do you do with it? And so the one that Don just said was join your local drug-free coalition, you know, help people be heard, you know, get your voice heard, let us know what's going on. You know, it takes a village, right, a community to really help tackle the demand portion of it. The second call to action would be share what you learned here today. You know, share with your kids, your neighbors, your, you know, coworkers, everything, that it just, you know, one pill can kill, right? It doesn't take much, you know, and that's the scary part. You know, a house mom that just needs to get some laundry done, that takes an Adderall that she got from her friend, or a college student that needs to study and wants to stay up late, you know, it's really, there's no discrimination anymore. The demographics have totally changed. So just share that information out, share what you learned today. And then the third call to action would be tomorrow in this room from 12 to 1, I'm doing a naloxone training. So naloxone is the medicine, Narcan is the brand, and I'll have Narcan to hand out and face masks. So if you want to come here, it's from noon to 1 tomorrow, and just an overdose response training, so prevention and response training. So we'd love to see you back here. You know, share it. It's definitely, it takes a community to help with this. So I think that's it for me. Dawn, do you have any?
I think we're good. Thank you again so much for being here, and be sure to visit the booths and grab some refreshments.
Yes, thank you, everyone.